Today we're going to talk about this Hollyland wireless image transmission system and ways it can make shooting videos more convenient and how it can lead to making more money by booking higher budget projects. As a filmmaking project becomes larger, it becomes more of a collaborative project. You start having more people around you who have specific jobs, and you start working with equipment that requires more hands-on attention. So with all that going on, simple tasks become complicated, and a good example of that would be focusing the camera. When it's just you shooting, you're probably working with a DSLR or a mirrorless camera with fancy autofocus, and you can go around and getting shots worry-free. But if it's a bigger budget job where you're now using a cinema camera that doesn't have autofocus, then things get more complicated. You can try manually focusing yourself, but you really want to make sure that you focus on framing your shots well and getting smooth footage and really just focusing on what you're doing, so it's best to have someone else manage the focus. Okay, cool. So now is it really convenient to have another person right next to you holding the camera trying to pull focus? Of course not. A wireless follow focus will solve this problem since they can manage the focus wheel without touching the camera and interrupting what you're doing. But now they still have to huddle around you and try to look on the same screen you're looking at to try to pull focus. So to solve that, you use a wireless image transmitter like the Hollyland Mars 400S to send the image from the camera to a separate monitor that they can look from and handle their job without interrupting yours. So today won't be an in-depth review of this system, but more of showing you ways you can use one of these systems to make your life easier and why it can lead you to making more money. Most of the time when I feature a product on this channel, a company reaches out to me with that product, I decide if it's worth reviewing, and then I show you guys and share my opinion on it. But this time I wanted to make the video because I just got the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K about a few months ago, and a product like this really helps when using a camera like the Pocket 4K. So I did my research on various transmitters on the market, and I reached out to Hollyland about their product and my ideas for it. So I want to thank Hollyland for letting me get to use this product, which now allows me to share this idea with you guys. So wireless image transmission. With the Hollyland Mars 400S, we can transmit a wireless video feed to another monitor that is within 400 feet. Let's start with something that can help out solo filmmakers and YouTubers out. If you ever filmed a top-down shot of anything where the camera is mounted high above you, pointing down, then you know it's a hassle because you can't see what you're doing, and even if the camera has a flip-out screen, it's still usually too far away to really see, or you'll be trying to look up at the camera and not focus on what you're doing in the video. So what's the next option? Well, you can run a long HDMI cable from the camera down to a monitor somewhere, but now you're limited by the length of the cable. You have to run the cable so that it is not in the way of the shot, and you can't accidentally move the cable or it'll shake the camera and ruin the overhead shot. But if you use a wireless image transmitter, then now the wire is gone and you're completely free to move around, and you can have the monitor any way you want. So if you decide to move your setup or change anything, you don't have to go back through the whole process of trying to rig all that up again. Also, if you're doing something like this where you're talking to a camera, some people would like to use longer focal lengths and have the camera further away from them. Well, just like with the top-down shot, you wouldn't be able to see the monitor to make sure that you're in focus or framed up properly. With the Mars 400S, not only can you transmit to the receiver, obviously, but you can also transmit to multiple smartphones or tablets. So you can send a live video feed and audio to the app on your phone, and you'll be able to clearly see what's going on. Now, how can this device lead you to making more money? Well, by impressing non-camera people. You know how if you show up to a shoot with a small little mirrorless camera all by itself, they might like your work, but they won't feel like they hired a super serious professional. But if you take that same camera and throw it in the camera cage and have all kind of mics and battery packs and cables and handles everywhere, then all of a sudden it looks professional. So now they feel like they paid for a higher end service even though the quality of the work is the same. So imagine if you're shooting a video project for a business and you use this transmitter connected to maybe one of their TVs or computer monitors so that the client can have their own personal monitor to see what it is that you're filming while you're filming it. Now that's a luxury experience for them, and since it can go to their phones as well, multiple people can view what you're shooting while it's happening. That brings them in as part of the process, and now they can give input and feedback during the actual shoot. Like, hey, I like what you did there, but can you do it again because our brand logo didn't show on the cup? Or that take looked better than the one before, so make sure you use that one. So that experience is much more engaging and probably fun for non-camera people to experience. And if they hire any other person around town to shoot something and they don't have all of this, they're going to feel like they hired a lower end service. And it's little things like that that will have clients calling you back with bigger and bigger budgets. Now, I've already covered how you can use the transmitter to use it for pulling focus wirelessly, and I've seen some people say that you can do it with this system, and I've seen some people say that you can't do it with this system. And usually the truth is somewhere in the middle. With most wireless things, the concern is always latency, and that's the delay between what's actually happening and when it shows up on screen. Now, big budget sets usually have very expensive transmitters that cost thousands of dollars because they pretty much have no latency at all, and they have a budget to be able to afford these things. But Hollyland has different levels of products for different people. Like the Mars 300 series is a bit lower with a 300 foot range, and it can't send the image to phones and tablets. The Mars 400 series has a 400 foot range, better build quality, a display, and the ability to use the app. Now this is the 400S version, which means it has SDI ports for cameras and monitors that support those connections. And Hollyland does also have higher end products like the Cosmo series with no latency at all and much bigger ranges. So this particular model uses a 5G signal, which does have a very small delay, so some people feel like you can't pull focus because of that. Well, let's think about it in a real world situation. Depending on the aperture, the focal length, and the distance you are from the subject, that determines the size of your depth of field. This can be as small as a few millimeters or as big as a couple of 100 feet. If you look at most shots in movies, they don't really have a super shallow depth of field. The backgrounds are always somewhat blurry, but not by much, and you can usually tell what's in the background, but there's enough background blur to separate the subject. So the person who's pulling focus usually has many feet in front and behind the subject that will also be in focus, so it's not like you step back 5 inches or so and the shot is ruined. So when you consider that, the very small delay isn't enough to cause somebody to miss focus under most normal situations. Plus, if you have somebody pulling focus, then whatever it is you're filming is probably planned out beforehand, and everyone knows where they're going and everyone knows where everything's going to happen at. But if you're in a situation where you're trying to film with a super shallow depth of field and things are moving around fast and unpredictably, then I can see how that could be a problem. So it's very subjective and depending on what you're doing, but for most situations, this is perfectly fine latency for pulling focus. So that's a few ways this comes in handy with filmmaking, but that doesn't mean that you're limited to camera related things. Literally anything that uses an HDMI signal can be sent wirelessly to any screen or monitor that can receive an HDMI signal. Something that I use it for is to transmit video from my computer to this projector rig that I made. And it's a projector with a homemade mounting bracket on it, so I can put it on the C-stand, and it allows me to project cool video or photo effects from my computer. Originally my problem was that if it's mounted really high in the air or really far away, then how can I connect my computer or laptop to send the signal? I literally went and bought a super long HDMI cable for this, but now I can have the projector anywhere I want and just send the image wirelessly. I definitely will be using these things for future videos, so definitely check them out, and I'll have a link in the description box. Now, of course, this is something that a beginner really shouldn't worry about, but if any of the things that I went over related to you, then picking one of these up can definitely help you move forward. Comment down below any ideas you have for how these things could be useful for what you do, and be sure to like this video, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.